Well, hello from Kentucky. Today we're gonna work on a Corvette. My neighbor, who was quite a bit of an old man, he died recently. Actually, he built this barn way before I bought this place. It used to be a tobacco barn. They used to dry tobacco leaves, but the only thing I'm drying right now in it is a 57 Ford Fairlane and a 56 Buick and some East German iron. But he died, and then his daughter inherited his nice Corvette. I'm not a Corvette guy, but I like old cars, and most importantly, I like to help my neighbors. So we're gonna go over to my neighbor's place and see what kind of Corvette that is, and then let's see if we can resurrect it. He used to live in that house over there on the other side. So let's go over there and see what we're up against. So here's the nice vet. It's hiding under that porch. Looks totally 1980s. It's got a bunch of glitter on it, and looks like it's sitting here for a long time. Got a little bit of a rusted muffler, but the tire is looking great actually. It just got a lot of dust on it. So let's see what's inside. Let's open it up and figure out how we're gonna take it over to my place. So the first question in my head was if we put it in neutral without the battery. I pulled the battery out of it a little bit ago because it was really cold to make sure, and we charged it up. But I put the keys in it and it went into neutral, so we can actually push the car, I'm pretty sure. So I'm gonna bring a tire pump. We're gonna pump up the tire on that, just the front left one, and then bring a jack so we can attach the hook properly, and then we're gonna pull it up on my trailer, take it over to my place and wash it off, and then I guess we're gonna roll it off right straight onto my lift. So I'm gonna need a tire pumper, some jack, and that's about it. So let's go get those things. So I hooked up the trailer. I really like that it's got electric brakes on it, because I can leave it here for months on end, and then it's still gonna work. When I come back in Europe, trailers must have juice brakes, and they always go bad if you don't use them. So looks like one of my relays broke last time when I brought the Bertona home. So I gotta use a screwdriver to activate it, and I need to find a battery for the battery box. So that comes next. couldn't take it any longer. I had to wash this poor car. It was really dusty. It was sitting under that carport. And look at all this glitter just came out. Almost like flitter, not even glitter. Look at that, totally 1980s. And then there is some airbrush in the middle. Very interesting. It's a total custom paint job. Unfortunately, the time has passed by it. A little bit of use were worn, but it's perfect because my neighbor just want to drive it, so it's a perfect driving condition. Unfortunately, I got some. I found some cracks on the tire, so on the side. The tread is really good, but it got little cracks on it, so I'm gonna ask her to buy new tires for it when she can. And then a little bit clean it up in the inside. I'm gonna still vacuum it, and then I just wash the seats because they were kind of grummy because they hasn't been set in for a while. But look at this paint job. It's incredible. Even on the tops. Yeah, in 1980, I was like sitting in a Trabant in Hungary, and I didn't even know this kind of car was existing. So it's kind of exciting for me to work on this. I love it. So now, next what we're gonna do is this thing is gonna dry off a little bit. So we're gonna have to pull out the Mercedes, the 240D, from inside the garage on the lift, and then when my kids get home, we're gonna able to push this Corvette on the lift, and then we can look at what's inside. I really did not want it to start the engine to drive it over here because it's sitting for a long time. I wanted to get all the oil out, so make sure those deposits not gonna circulate around in the engine. I just wanted to, I'm gonna open the release the drain plug and then let it drain for like probably a good day, and then put new oil in it. So next thing is the diesel Mercedes. Let's get it out. So the way it works in an old Mercedes, I have to turn the key on. The ignition is, well, there's no ignition, it's a diesel. So now pulling the starter until the little, well, we call it the hornet's nest, start glowing. You can see it's in the middle of the screen, ever so lightly, yeah, right there. It's start glowing, and once it's glowed, that means all the glow plugs are glowing as well in the engine. So we can pull it further, pull that lever on the left further, and then it started right up. All right, well, let's take it outside. Well, after the diesel engine, it looked like the garage is in fire. The diesel smoked up the garage quite a bit. So now I'm just gonna clean up the lift, and then take off the Corvette from the trailer. Just gonna do a little sweeping here. Well, the Corvette is in the garage finally. I got it off the trailer without any damages. It worked out fine. So I'm gonna get some help here. I'm gonna push it on the lift and see what's underneath. Most likely lots of oil and spider webs and who knows what, but we'll make it run again. And it's another beautiful morning in Kentucky. Let's see what can we do with this beautiful sparkly Corvette. So first thing we're gonna do is lift it up and let the oil down, and then try to analyze it, like what's inside. I assume we're not gonna find anything bad in it because it was just sitting, it was running, and then I guess it was too hard for the owner to get in, so he stopped driving it. So let's just lift it up and see what's underneath. Now at first glance, let's go look underneath. What do we see? Lots of spider webs. I see some oil leak. Ooh, this unit is terrible. This is a power steering, just like Ford Fairlane, just like in a Ford Fairlane, what they did, like that was a non-powered steering, and then they just put that actuator rod on it, so it will actually feel which way you push the steering wheel, and it will start turning start helping you. But that's always leaks, like on this one too. It's a terrible proposition. Well, I don't see any place where the fluid leaked out from the brake, but nonetheless, it's a good news that we see a nice new oil filter on it, so maybe the oil was changed. So just to be sure, we start with that. And then looks like this output shaft seal leaks a little bit. Am I going to change that? And then if you come back, see a lot of rust, but oh yeah, that brake line is totally rotten. Over here, that's a little bit better. It looks like it was changed on this side, but not on the other side. This brake hose is bad too, and that's rusted, so yeah, we're gonna get on this. But before we do that, we're gonna change the oil to make sure this leaks a little bit too. Maybe it's just a lower seal what's actually leaking on it, the transmission. And for some reason, this looks like this pulley is very close to that that frame piece. So I don't know what to do with that. Most likely the engine mount is collapsed a little. So well, the engine mount looks pretty good. So I don't know. I'll try to think about that for a second. Like, why is this one too low and almost touching? So if the engine moves a little bit, it might be touching. So let's start with the first thing first. I'm gonna let the oil down, take the filter off, and then assess the brake line, see which one we need to order. So the next thing I looked at is that I took off the master cylinder lid, and there's absolutely no fluid in it, a little junk in it, but this looks like it was changed not too long ago. So maybe I'm just gonna take it apart and see what's inside. And probably the valve cover gaskets needs to be changed as well. So I put these two covers over it to make sure we don't hurt the paint. And then I just let the oil down. I let it drip for probably a good day to have everything out of it. It all looked good, it was okay. It was thick, dirty, but it was fine. There was no water in it or anything. Oh, let's keep on trucking. Looks like that little rubber piece over here on that modulator needs to be changed as well. And then I ordered some new seals for the transmission pan. I'm gonna change that and change the output shaft seal also. There are several different versions of this transmission, so we'll have to take it into Napa and show them what I got to match it up. But either way, we're gonna have to take the wheels off to start getting ready to do some brake repair. And looks like that brake line was changed. It looks like that brake line hasn't been changed. There must be a reason behind it. Maybe it was too difficult or hard. But well, let's get to it. Yeah, I decided to take Peachy off the lift because I have to jack it up and support it with some jack stands. Because I gotta take all four wheels off and take the rotors off and the calipers off. So I don't have a kind of lift for that purpose yet, but I think I'm gonna buy one and put it there where the pickup truck is, so we can do that next time easier. But I only had to lift it up at one point, sort of like under where the door is arriving, and then it's opened up lifted up the front and the back. So I have these really nice jack stands on all four corners, so now I can take the wheels off and get access to the brake parts. I really want to take the rotors down to Napa and get them teared down, and yeah, got some calipers for it too. Okay, now that we have the wheels off, I'm gonna have to take the calipers off. So there's one main bolt or pin will come out. There's a little secure pin at the end, and then I have these two gigantic bolts what I can take off. I'm gonna just cut that hose. We don't need that. We're gonna get a new one on. And then in order to get the disc off, I have a feeling that I'm gonna have to take the bearing off, but I'm not sure yet. Once it comes off, we'll see how it moves. Probably got to research that for a second, but I have a feeling that it will have to have the bearings out. We'll find out. And then in the back, looks like it's gonna be a lot easier. Looks like this disc will come right off. So same thing, there's a pin on the top, 2 gigantic bolts, and it's got a metal line what goes into the rubber line, so I can just cut that one. We got a new one coming. And then look at how rusted that is. So even though it has quite a bit of brake pad left on it, you can see it from here, I still need to put new ones on because we're gonna tear this one down at Napa, and then it's gonna be a nice new surface. I want to make sure these ones are properly gonna break in for the new surface, so I don't trust the old ones, unfortunately. But they're not costing too much money, so that's all right. But look at how rusted it got sitting around. So next thing, we're gonna take the calipers off. That's the next objective. So I was able to get the brake pads off. One of the brake pads, actually this inner one, was really hard to get it out. I had to actually pry it out, and that means it was not moving this way at all. Plus it's all wet. So if you look at both pads are really wet. So that means that there was a major leak here. So even though the caliper looks like somebody put it on new, I don't know how long ago, I guess it was not used too much because all the cylinders are actually shiny, but I'm pretty sure that it was leaking here like crazy because all these ones were all wet. So that's probably where the brake fluid went. And then the other thing is, when you guys working on one of these, there are 2 bolts in it. Again, I don't want to teach the Eagle how to fly here, but for those of you who are actually just going to do this job, there are 2 bolts here. Do not take that off. That's us holding the caliper together. This is the little one, the 5/8 one, what you need to take off. And then make sure you don't use a socket like this, which has like a star shape. Make sure you use a nice 6-angle shape, so because if you lose this bolt, it's going to be really hard to take it off, and then you can avoid a lot of headaches by using the proper socket for it. And then I also have like a nice big bar here, what I use to very nicely put it on just in the right angle, and then good push, and then it comes off. So now we got one of these off. We just got 3 more to go, and then once I have those ones off, I'm most likely gonna take the bearing off and then see what's underneath. We're probably gonna put new grease in it, wash the bearings out if you have to take it off anyway. And then looks like it's rolling very nicely and it's not loose at all, but the surface is very rusted. So I really want to make sure that it's all running in a top-notch condition for the brake. There's something very interesting what I found when I took everything off. Look at that, this thing is riveted to the hub. So there's the bearing hub, and then there are the rivets. In the back, I can even feel it, that there are the rivets there. So the bearing hub is, the rotor is riveted to the bearing hub, and then with these rivets. So on the other side, at the other hand, it was not. Looks like somebody already changed it. So there is the nice new rotor. Well, new. the inside was new, and then looks like over here I see the rivet holes that used to be riveted on, and it just popped right off. So most likely on the other side I'm gonna just drill the rivets off, and then if that rotor needs changing, most likely just order another rotor for it. And then we're gonna try to tear this one down. Hopefully it's new enough that it's gonna take a nice resurfacing. So I started to drill out the rivets. I put a little dot there, and then I started drilling it, and it went sideways because it was keep moving. So to stabilize it, I put a big bar there so the whole thing wouldn't move, so I can drill it straight. Fortunately, the rivets are really soft, made out of soft material, so it's kind of easy to drill. So I was able to drill off the head of the rivets. So the next thing we're gonna put a little bit of lube in here, spray it. I'm gonna clean up the mess here before my dogs step in it, and then we're gonna try to get that rotor off. So let's go back to the real basics. So those of you who know how to fix a car, I apologize, but maybe someone watching it who doesn't know how it works. So the way I was trying to get it off, and I was trying to hit it off with a nice big hammer, but it didn't happen. So I'm gonna have to take the bearings off, and the whole thing with the hub gonna come off. So first there is a cap, like a grease cap. It comes off. I usually don't throw it on the ground. I put it on something nice, And then there is a pin what goes through. The pin has to come out, and then once you get the pin out, you're gonna have to take off this nut, and then behind the nut there must be usually a big washer, and then you're gonna see the first bearing, what's gonna come out right there. And then you don't want to lose these. And then the other bearing in the back most likely is stuck in it with a seal. There's a seal on the other end, and there's another bearing in it. So now you can hold the whole thing and pull the whole thing off, and now you got something to work with. When you put it back, it's supposed to clean it all out, wash the bearings out, re-grease it, and then put it back together. And then you got to adjust it. You make sure you don't over tight that nut when you put it back. Just tight it enough so the whole thing doesn't have a looseness. You gotta keep turning it, tighten it just almost by hand or barely any force, and then make sure you don't over tight it, because then you're gonna have a premature bearing failure. Well, I couldn't say no to sheer force, so I got this big hammer made for horseshoes, and then I was able to get it out immediately. It came out, so now I can take it apart, clean it up, and then put the bearings back in it, and then get a new rotor for it. So now that I got the rotors off, we're gonna take them to Napa. And what else we're gonna take than our 240D 1976 Mercedes. I went through all this stuff with this one before, so it's already set for the carrying all these parts. So finally the sun came out. So it's gonna be a nice ride to Napa. We had the rotors turned down really nicely. We got the new calipers, remanufactured calipers. We got another gas cap, because the one would have one is on the car. It has a key in it, and it's really complicated to use. And then output shaft seal, engine mount, which was very inexpensive. And then it's gonna be probably pretty hard to install, but that's all right. We got the new rotor pads. Now this was interesting. So that's the transmission seal. The transmission seal was more expensive than if I would bought it with the filter. So I really wanted to change the filter anyway, since I take the pan off. So I'm gonna clean the pan, change the filter, change the seal. There's some valve cover gaskets, original AC Daco spark plugs, and then we got the brake lines, and then other stuff, the master cylinder, and more brake lines. So first I'm gonna take care of this one piece here, what I had to take off and do. So that's gonna be the first course of action. I'm gonna have to take the rivets out of it, re-grease the whole thing, install the bearings, and then put back. And then I'm gonna have to clean off the bolts by holding the calipers on. I'm gonna have the little wire brush, and then gonna clean them up to make sure they go back nicely. And also I think I need to change the washers on it. I need to come up with new lock washers, because some of them are really bad. And then we got a couple of we got oil. I really like this oil. I believe this is the last oil what has all the stuff in it what is all the engines needs. The tapered camshaft lifters, it's like a straight 30 oil. All the rest of the oil, as I understand, they missing the additives what these old engines need. Since there is no catalytic converter on this car, we can put this in there. And then also we got some ATF what I'm gonna need when I pull off the pan, and I'm gonna clean off the pan inside. So that's where we are. Keep on trucking, I guess. So I'm working on removing the factory rivets, because we're not gonna need them no more. So what I found is I was trying to hit it without drilling a hole in it, but it was not happening. So once I drilled holes in them all the way through, then you can drive them out very easily. So as long as it's all the way through. So if it's If it's just halfway, then it's not going to happen. But when it's drilled all the way through, the rivet able to shrink enough, and then you can drive them through. I really want them to have a nice hole there, so there would be no problem with balancing the wheel. Once I'm done with this, then I'm going to start cleaning up the inside, and then we're going to put it together with new grease and grease up the bearings, wash out and grease up the bearings. Well, since I had to take the hub off, I'm going to remove the lower bearing from it. It's very simple. Only the seal is holding it in, so I have a pipe. Well, this one is a socket wrench, but whatever. So I'm going to put that in, and very easily I can start tapping on it and it comes right out. And as you see, the bottom, it's got two bearings in it. This is the larger one. This is the smaller one, and that's how this hub works. And then this at the bottom, that's the seal. So since we have it out, I'm just gonna wash the bearings out, put new grease in it. I think I'm gonna change this seal since I have it out. And then we're gonna put it back together with new grease in it to make sure it works fine. You see there are the races inside, but it can be removed, but we're not gonna change the bearings. Bearings looks really nice for now. And then if this one has different colors, like purplish colors, bluish colors, that means it's run without oil, it's kind of burnt or over tightened, then you should change it. The way you can change it is you have one of these tools that goes through, and then you actually start hitting it, and you can able to hit that out very nicely, and then so is the other side. But it's not going to be necessary. We're just going to clean it up, change the seal, put it back together. Okay, so now with the help of a little carb cleaner, this is what it looks like. I clean the bearings out. I know there are better things which we could use, but the car part store is about 20 minutes from here, so I don't really want to go anywhere. So nicely I clean everything out of it. Then with the compressor I blow it out, so get all the little pieces out. And then you gotta be careful with the carb cleaner, make sure it doesn't go on any kind of painted surface. Like cars don't like carb cleaner at all. I already cleaned up the hub, as you see, so it's nicely ready for the new grease and the old bearings. These bearings look really good. It's made in USA. Time can made in USA. That was a time when there were things still made in this country. So once I all cleaned it up, then the next thing gonna be we're gonna put some grease on it. So I cleaned this hub quite nicely. Got all the old grease out and clean it out. The race looks great in it, so I don't think I'm gonna change the bearing races or the bearings itself. They're good time can bearings. I cleaned out all the bearings also, so now we're gonna fill it up with grease. So I know there is a tool what you can use for this, but I never used it. Like a grease packing tool that makes it faster, but I usually just grease it all up, put it in a couple times, and then it works just fine. Make sure it's got grease everywhere. Actually squeeze the grease in there. And first I do the inner bearing, which is a lot wider. So now that the bearing has grease in it, I grease up the brace, and I'm gonna push it in, and I'm gonna twist it back and forth a little bit, so for the grease would go in deeper, and then I pack a little bit more into it, and just by doing that it will be packed very nicely. None of my bearings have complained in the past not having enough grease in them. Alright, good thing they can't talk, huh? Alright, so once this one is done, we're gonna put a little bit more in the middle, underneath. Looks like I'm gonna have to buy another jar of grease soon. Well, before I put this seal back on, I want to make sure that the rubber part, the seal part, has some lubrication on, just to make sure. And then it goes on like this. And now I'm gonna have to hit it a little bit. This is the old seal. It looks a very sturdy seal. It's all metal. It's a metal brace, and then the rubber in the middle. It looked really good. So I'm gonna hit it back until it's flush, and then clean it off just a little. And then now we can go the other side. And I need another paper towel. The other side we do the same thing with the other bearing. But before I do that, I'm gonna fill up this hole inside that bearing housing to make sure I got enough grease in there. And I know most of you know how to do this. If you have old cars, you're probably laughing at it. Or just wind it forward. I do it for those viewers who may be younger or maybe haven't seen such a thing. Maybe they just get out of high school and bought a Corvette for some reason, or they inherited it from grandpa and they don't know how to do this. So maybe that would be too obvious for some, but maybe somebody would learn a little bit of this, learn from it, what I'm showing you. So this thing, the same thing, move it back and forth a little bit, and that way the grease getting pressed into it. Make sure you got enough grease in there. One more time. And looks good. So now we can put it back on the car. All right. Now everything is greasy now, but it's clean grease, so it's all right. So the next part is kind of basic too, but while we at it, I'm gonna show it to you. So there is a big washer. The washer goes in here, so it can go in and out, but it's not gonna able to turn with the bearing. And there is a big knot which will go on. They all cleaned off. There is a hole at the middle of the spindle where you can put the pin through. So before I put this on, I usually like to put this washer on here. Note where the wedge is in it, so it will be up on the top. Then we're gonna put a little bit of grease around the back side to make sure that rubber seal gonna have something to slide on. And then I'm usually holding it with two hands because the front bearing is just held in position by the grease, and move it until the whole thing goes on very nicely. And once it did, then we can start putting on the knot. Now we gotta be careful with how much we tighten the knot. If we over tighten it, there will be a bearing failure, a premature bearing failure. If you don't tighten it enough, the wheel is gonna be loose. So on some cars, on one side, this knot is reverse thread. Not on this one, but on some other cars, I've seen that before in the past. So if the knot is not coming off, that's why, because it's reverse thread. Okay, so it pretty much should be tightened just a little bit more than by hand. So it's already pretty good. So we're gonna put just a hair more on it. Okay. A little bit back. That should do it. Here are the pins. There's several different sizes. Not in this box. This size is gonna be just fine. Okay. See, on the pin you get one side is bigger, the other one is smaller. The bigger is the longer one is there, so you can pull it back with your finger or with a plier. The reason for this pin is to make sure that that knot will not gonna turn. So you can cut one side off or just bend it back if you want to. There's the other side. Just make sure that will not touch that cap what we put on. There we go. And now we can put the cap back on. I also cleaned the inside of the cap. It's all nice. Yeah, when I was exposed to cars, this was the first job what I ever done on actual an Opel Commodore from 1967 or 68. I think it was 68, an A Commodore. All right, so now it looks good. It's all in. Yep, just to make sure it's not loose at all. Okay, so now we can put the rotor on. Okay, surprisingly all four rotors are the same. The front and back are the same. So here's this one, looks like it's nicely tore down, resurfaced. Got to find the holes, push it on all the way, and there. Now here comes the next thing we gotta do is I got these two bolts. We're gonna hold on the caliper. I'm gonna go to the grinding machine, and I have a wire brush in the grinding machine which I can clean these bolts from rust. And I didn't like these washers too much anymore. They lost their effectiveness. They like lock washers, so I bought new ones to put on, and then we can put on the then we can install the calipers. Now we can continue with putting on the brake hose. The brake hose has a nice little copper washer which is going to create the proper seal, and that goes in here for the caliper. That's where they're all going to come to push the pistons out and then push the two brake shoes in. Okay, so I got the bolts all the way almost in, and now we're gonna just tighten them up. I'm using this big arm. And then now we're gonna have to put these brake pads on. Okay, so now we have successfully install the caliper. The next thing is this pin and a cotter pin. So as you see, there's a cotter pin that goes through the end. This thing goes through here. Make sure it goes through the brake shoe, and then ends up at the other side, the very other side. You got to adjust this brake shoe so it will go up enough. And now that it came out at the other side, we're gonna push this cotter pin through and bend it back. So I was trying to take out that brake line right there, but even though I use the proper tools, it's in there for so long that it's kind of rotten in, so I can't get it out. So that means I'm gonna have to change the brake line, which is probably a good thing because it's old. My neighbor lady bought the proper brake lines. The whole set is our stainless steel, made for this car this year. So I'm gonna want to change it. Here's the rest of it on this nice Lincoln V12 engine. So I got the parts for the rear calipers also. This goes for the rear caliper on the trailing arm, and then I got all of them here pre-bent nicely, except the big ones. The long ones actually has to be bent out, but I don't want to touch them until I know where they go. So I'm gonna start taking apart all the brake lines. It's kind of hard. There are some clips on one side and then the other side, and then on the front of the car there are two more for that line what comes around and it goes into the proportioning valve. So I'm gonna have to get those off. It's gonna be a pain in the ass, but we'll get it done. And then I'm gonna have to take the master cylinder out. Anyway, we're gonna change that anyway. So I'm gonna take those two pipes off what goes into the master cylinder, and then I'm gonna just change the whole thing. I'm just gonna go through and change every one of those brake lines. It's really hard to take a video of that, so you're gonna miss that part. I'm just gonna sweat under it for probably a good day to get those done, because it's really easy when the car has no engine and nothing in it, but unfortunately it's not an option here. So I'm gonna take the master cylinder off and then go from there. So this is on the other side. Looks like I cut it. I cut the line, so it will actually come out. You can see it fall down, and then there's the original brake line that will come out. I already got the clamps off of it and then disconnected at the proportioning valve, and then we're gonna put in the new one. It goes right in here, and then this will go through that, and then this will connect. Just really hard to do it with one hand. So there are several parts in it where there are clamps holding it to the car. It's like a 1/2 inch wrench we need to get it off. And I'm working on that to replace all of these brake lines with these stainless steel brake lines. Came from Texas, from Katy, Texas. They're really high quality, just perfect brake lines. The proportioning valve is that piece down there. Let's see if I can zoom into it, on it. It's kind of rusted, so I think I'm gonna change that too. I asked the neighbor lady to buy a new one, found one on eBay, so we're gonna just switch that off. That proportioning valve is the one that's responsible for the brake pressure between the front and the rear wheels. And also if the rear wheels start leaking, then basically it's like gonna shut it off, so it wouldn't leak that far. So once this one is done, when we get the new one, then I can change all the brake lines going to the back, and in the front I'm gonna do it before we get the new proportioning valve. I'm just gonna change the front lines right now. So now this is the front suspension. We're under the car. You can see the front brake line. It's got 3 more holders here. That's the middle one over here. You can see that nice bolt sticking out. There's another one behind there, and there's a third one there, and then 2 more on the upper part that you can reach from the engine compartment. So once I took these 3 bolts or 3 screws out, then I can remove that brake line. The brake line ends up in the proportioning valve under the servo. I got the old brake line out. It wasn't easy just to get it out. Holy moly. So anyhow, I had to cut it to get it out just about there. I had to cut it at the flexible brake hose also, and it came out like down in front of the car from both ends. I also cut it at the proportioning valve. And then when I put the new one in, I did the same thing. So I pushed it up this way. I routed it around the coolant hose. Fortunately for me, the compressor is missing. The AC compressor is missing. So next to the upper arm, it was able to go and then actually go around it. I don't know how much you can see from it, but finally it's actually there at the end. So finally I got the metal line connected to the rubber hose. Before I put this stift in, or whatever that holder is, I just had it out just to stand alone and hang up in the air, and then make sure it was cut the thread very nicely, or got in very nicely by hand, because I don't want to cross thread it. Very easy to cross thread it. So as long as both of them are in the air, you can find just the right angle to mate them together and screw that knot in. And it's still not tightened because I have not placed the holders while holding this metal brake line to the frame. So until then, it actually can change its position if it wants to, but I actually set it up here, so make sure that's correctly held in position. And then I'm gonna able to still move it as I need to. But at first, I want to have the new proportioning valve. I want to connect the other side of this pipe to the new proportioning valve. And then once that's done, then I'm gonna tie it down, and I'm gonna tie it to I'm gonna place all those holders just like this one, but holding it to the frame, and then I can position the whole thing finally. So now we're back at the driver's side. Here's the brake booster, that big drum you see. Still need to clean that off before I put the new part on. And then my system is that I do not remove all the brake lines all at once. I only remove those ones what I actually need to work on to make sure that they will go back to the proper place, the proper position. So once I get the new proportioning valve, I'm gonna reattach them just the way they were, make sure they get the correct position, and then I'm gonna mount them to the frame. But until it arrives, I think I can work on the valve cover gaskets and other things I can reach from here. So I think the next thing gonna be that I'm gonna remove the air filter housing and get on the valve cover gasket change. So I got the air filter off. First thing what I noticed is that this switch, this heat operated switch, vacuum switch is broken, and that is the one what actually switching the vacuum pre-ignition. So I'm gonna have to see if that actually working. So I'm gonna pull that off, and it came off really easy. I gotta change all these hoses, and I gotta see if that actually works or not. And then here's I think this is the EGR valve. I gotta see if I can take the valve covers off without taking this one off. So we'll find out. So yeah, the vacuum hoses are in really bad shape. So I'm gonna see which one needs to be replaced, and I replace most of it what I have to. But I think I'm gonna disregard this switch. That's like a heat switch, and it's kind of broken, so I don't think that works anymore. So I'm gonna disregard that, and then put the vacuum port, the vacuum right onto that port what comes out at the bottom of that carburetor. So that metered port, what for pre-ignition, it comes into this switch, and then after that, when it warms up, it comes into here. But I don't think that's necessary, so I think I'm just gonna bypass this switch and just let it go. There's no emissions on this car anymore, nor we have any emission test in Kentucky, so that doesn't really matter for us now. So 4 bolts, and I take the valve cover off. That's the next task. So I had to remove the EGR valve. If that's an EGR valve, doesn't very much look like it. And then I had to take off the heater hose also. Looks like it's very nice, fresh coolant came out of it. That's good news. It means inside the engine probably okay. And now I can remove the valve cover and then replace the gasket on it and put it back on. So now that I have the valve cover off, I can assess how does it look inside. So that's probably tell me how the rest of the engine looks like. It's not all that totally clean, but not all that dirty either. So I'm pretty sure it will run. We're gonna put the new oil in it, and it will be just fine. So I'm gonna clean off the mating surfaces and put the new gasket on. Yeah, this valve cover looked better. It's seen better days. A little dirty, so I'm thinking I'm gonna try to wash it off. I'm probably gonna take it inside the house. It's too cold outside, so I'm gonna try to get the. Maybe I'm gonna put it in the dishwasher. Just I don't know. I'm gonna try to clean it up, see what happens. Man, I thought I was just gonna take that valve cover off, but not so. So there's a couple of wires and hoses on the front, so I had to remove that holder which goes into the alternator. Then in the back there is a cruise control actuator bracket in the bottom, and then I can't get to it unless I remove this cover. So in order to remove this cover, I have to take this hood release cable off. So now finally I can actually remove this, and then I can get to the bolts what's holding the bracket. Well, now I start to approach British car repair territory, because this thing is just not giving it up. So I removed the bolt from the cruise control actuator housing. Now it's fine on that side, but now there's an interference with the alternator. So I not only have to take this bundle off, but now I'm gonna have to loosen the alternator, take the belt off, and make the whole thing move this way, so I can finally get access to that valve cover. I've seen evidence of oil leak from here all the way down, so I'm thinking most of the cover gasket was okay, but where the bolts went through, that's where it started to leak. So anyhow, I'm too far in it, so no turning back now. Alternator is coming off, or actually just gonna get it loosened and then move it out of the way. So now that the alternator went out of the way, I was able to remove the valve cover. This groomlet is really super hard. Also, This looks like it's not a vacuum hose, but it's a fuel hose. It's also hard, so it really needs to be changed. A PCV valve still looks fine, but the little ball is actually moving up and down in it, but I don't know, maybe we just replace that as well. So next thing I got to do is clean off the surface and get the grease off of it, and then install the new valve cover gasket. Meanwhile, I'm probably going to do a run to the car parts store and find some appropriate hose, probably that valve, and a couple of other little vacuum hoses, for example, what goes here between these two parts here. So keep on trucking. So I spent last night to clean up these two valve covers. Did what I can. I know they're not expensive, but we try not to spend too much money on this. But I just couldn't see them dirty and not shiny again. So now I'm gonna clean the mating surfaces again on the engine, and then we're gonna reinstall these. So I guess this side is on. I only put paste like the silicone to the valve cover side. I didn't put any on the cylinder head side. And for beginners, I like to tell you to be careful not to over tighten those screws was holding it on. But it was kind of a challenge to put it on because there's so many things hanging out here. So now this side is done. Let's go to the other side. This side of the valve cover is up as well. And I just wanted to show you that I use this RTV to install engine parts. Sometimes I watch that channel, that Project Farm, and then he testing all kind of things, and he tested these silicones too, and then this proved to be the best one from all of them. There's the number if you're interested, and there's a different one for the automatic transmission and different one for the engine components. So this one is for the engine components. I also have another set for the transmission. So when I put up the lower pan, that's going to be used for the transmission, with the other version. So now before I start putting everything back around these valve covers, I'm going to start changing the spark plugs because now I can get to them easier. So just for novice car guys, just try to pull one plug wire off, change that one spark plug, and then put that back on so you don't have to be, don't mess it up. And then once you try to start the car, you're gonna scratch your head at why is it not starting anymore. So next thing is spark plug change. So we got the AC Delco. That's the original GM equipment. However, it was made in China, as you can see. So I guess if it was not made in China, it's not original anymore. Pretty sad, but it is what it is. They're very nicely made spark plugs actually, and they were very precisely gapped. I bought one of these gap gauges, and then I'm setting it up to 0.45. They were set for 0.40 when it came out from the box. Every one of them consistently was very nicely set, but the Chevy manual calls for this between 0.045 and 0.50. So I set all of them up. So next thing I'm going to do is start pulling out the spark plugs, putting these ones back in. And before I put them back in, I'm going to put a little bit of that anti-seize on it to make sure that next time when trying to get it out, we'll be able to get it out. And then I'm going to put the old ones next to it so we can actually check it. So that's going to be the front of the car, driver's side, passenger side. And then we're going to go through the cylinders and then see what the spark plugs are, what condition the spark plugs are in. So I got to the very last spark plug on this side, and it was really hard. I tried to get to the spark plugs with a spark plug wrench. It didn't happen. Most of them I was able to use this regular 5/8 wrench, and that was good. And the last one I had to use this one to get it in. So again, I put anti-seize on the thread, and then dielectric grease or silicone grease on the porcelain part, so the spark plug boot will slide off. Well, next time I'm gonna try to take this off, if I ever gonna, or whoever does it next time, gonna have a better chance taking them off. So this side is done. The other side is next. Well, this side was a lot easier. Let's look at the spark plugs. Most of the time, a spark plug can tell a lot of story about the engine, but looks like these spark plugs only have some carbon buildup, but none of the less, it probably didn't run too much. They were just sitting there and got a little rusted, but all of them have the same kind of issue, a lot of carbon on it. So I'm kind of thinking they were changed not too long ago. I mean, mileage wise, not time wise, but Looks like they're all good, so I'm not too worried about that engine. I think it's going to run fine. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to fix the vacuum hoses and put everything back together the way it was before I took the valve covers off. So first thing first, I put the little bolt back in what holds the bracket for this cruise control actuator. Then I put the alternator back on, and I cleaned up the surfaces, the mating surfaces, and cleaned up the ground wires, what goes there, and then I can put this one back in there. I changed this hose, that hose, this one, and this one what goes into the booster pump. I also changed this little hose here, and now we got a whole bunch of vacuum hoses ready for installation. So in the next episode, we're gonna look at the vacuum system on this car. It's kind of modified because it made for being an emission car, and then now that's all gone. So none of the emission standards are required here. So I'm gonna have to figure out how to do this so the car would run properly. Also, we're gonna finish off installing the brakes. The front is done, the rear one is the next one. And then once we have that done, the neighbor lady finally all fired up, so she's gonna buy some new tires. I told her the old ones were dry rotten, so even though they had thread on them, but they were dry rotten, so I recommended her to buy some tires. We're gonna do that, then we're gonna put the wheels back, put it back up there, and then continue on. I found this one from my Austin Hilly project. I made a monster Hilly. If you guys haven't seen it, please check out my video about it. It's an Austin Hilly on steroids, what I built pretty much out of nothing with my uncle. And this muffler cover was for that car, and I have one left as an example. So I could possibly install this over this, and then maybe I can find another one and make it look better. Plus, the owner was complaining that when she gets out, her pretty legs are touching the muffler, and then it'll get burnt up. So that would be a good way to prevent that from happening. So will it run? I'm pretty sure it will. Thank you for watching. Please watch the next episode next week, where we're going to continue resurrecting this beautiful car.